in the roadway project management section at MassDOT Highway Division headquarters in Boston. Once the hearing is completed this evening, the attendance sheet will be part of the public record. So if you would like your attendance at this hearing to be part of the public record, please sign in on the sign-in sheet, which is over on the table over there with the rollout plans and all the information on the side. Handouts containing details regarding the project are next to the sign-in sheet. I realize we brought 40 copies and there's well more than 40 people here, so we don't have enough. Anything else could be submitted to my email, and I can stick around afterwards and provide my email to anybody else that needs that, so that you can submit any questions directly to me, and I'll answer them in the same manner, in the same window as the formal ones in the written handout packet. Now I'd like to introduce the members of the hearing panel. We have the District Representative Laura from District 2. We have the Right-of-Way Representative Karen from the Right-of-Way Bureau. We have our designer representatives Matt and Van from VHB, the city's design consultant for the project. We have our transcriptionist Walter Mantani of Arlington Typing and Mailing, Arlington, Mass, who will be making a verbatim transcript of tonight's hearing for the public record as required by law. In the handout, the notice of hearing is included. This notice appeared in the Valley Advocate on January 2nd and 9th, and the Republican on January 9th. A copy of this notice will be attached to the final hearing transcript. On page 2 of the handout explains the purpose of this hearing, which gives us an opportunity to make a formal presentation of the proposed project, and at the same time allows us to record your input regarding the project. The project we will be presenting is improvements and related work on Union Street. It will reconstruct Union Street from Payson Ave to High Street. We are currently in the design stage, which means we are soliciting your input on how to improve the project. We estimate the total project cost to be around $4.6 million, which will come from the main funding source, federal aid funding from FHA, which would be 80% by them and 20% remaining funds by MassDOT. Some costs will also be by the town for some water and sewer work. Total estimated cost of this project does not include any right-of-way acquisition costs. The design is expected to be completed by the winter of 2021. Construction is expected to be completed within 18 months of that. As you may be aware, the reason for this project is that this section of Union Street has several deficiencies, including lack of bicycle accommodations and poor roadway conditions, many of them negatively impacting the safety. In a few minutes, Matt of VHB is going to tell you about this project and how it will improve infrastructure and reduce impacts stated earlier. But first, I would like to ask Karen to explain the right-of-way procedure.
Thank you, Josh. Good evening, everyone. When the Commonwealth, acting through its Massachusetts Department of Transportation Highway Division, indicated it would accept this project for funding, your municipality accepted certain responsibilities. One of those is acquiring all the necessary rights in private and public lands for the design, construction, and implementation of the project. My function is to review and recommend procedures that your municipality will use in acquiring these rights. The procedures used must comply with both federal and state regulations. The current design plans indicate there are approximately 19 permanent easements and approximately 37 temporary easements required. The property owners impacted by this project will be contacted by your municipal officials. They will present the proposed impacts to each owner and discuss the methods with which they may acquire the needed rights for the project. Frequently, municipalities will appeal for donations to minimize the acquisition cost to the community. However, donations are not required, and property owners are entitled to appraisal, review appraisal, and just compensation. Right-of-way documents will be provided to each owner to help them understand the acquisition process and how the project affects their property. Affected property owners' rights are protected under our Massachusetts general laws, primarily Chapter 79. And because this project is receiving federal funds, the property owners' rights are further defined under Title III of the Real Property Acts of 1970 as amended. I'm happy to answer any general questions concerning right-of-way during the open forum, and I'll be here as long as anyone needs any right-of-way questions answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Now VHB will describe the city's project in detail for you. Please keep in mind that the project we're presenting to you tonight is still in the design stage. Once VHB is done telling you about the design, I'll explain the hearing procedure and then open up the hearing to questions and comments, which we will take into consideration when completing the design. Please hold your questions until after the presentation.
Matt, you can stand if you want.
What's
You
that?
can stand if you
Oh,
wish.
okay.
I've got a request to speak up if possible.
Okay.
Oh, I'll talk loud.
I'll try to speak up a little louder, sorry.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me? Is that good? All right. I'm going to be speaking to the presentation that's on the screen over there to your left. Union Street, the project, as was noted, is from Cottage Street to High Street. It's approximately 1,800 linear feet. There's a little history to the project. It's been this quarter's been talked about since 2013. There was a planning group that looked at some realignment of the Manhan Trail, some different pavement treatments. It's pretty narrow out there today. Looking for ways to reconfigure the lanes to include bicycle lanes and creating more of a gateway in the downtown. That was in 2013. In 2015, the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission came in, looked at some safety assessments and some intersection conflict points, identified poor pavement conditions, and then a need to review parking and add bicycle lanes throughout the corridor. In 2017, VHB has been working with the city to identify improvements for the corridor, and as part of the Complete Streets Prioritization Plan, this project was reviewed as part of that, and then this project spun out of that as part of the state's Transportation Improvement Program, where we've acquired funding for the 2022 TIP. So I'm going to run through why we need this project. I think a lot of you frequently visit Union Street, I'm sure, but there's poor pavement that's out there today. It's in disrepair. The sidewalks are significantly sloped from the face of the building down to the street level. We're going to try to correct that. The travel lanes are narrow. The curb reveals minimal in a lot of areas, which makes it unsafe. There's a high number of crashes. The traffic signal is old and antiquated. We want to enhance the rail trail crossing visibility. Obviously, there's a lack of bicycle accommodations. A lot of utility poles, if you haven't noticed, are right on the edge of the roadway adjacent to the curb. The city has identified water and sewer upgrades that are needed, which will be, as noted, will be advanced as part of the design. And then the crosswalk locations have been modified and they need to be spaced properly. These are just some photos along the corridor. The first one on the left shows that the reveal is pretty low on the curb. Traditionally like a 6-inch reveal. There's probably maybe 2 inches or less. The sloped sidewalks, there's another photo there in the center, and then utility poles just really close to the edge of the roadway. Some more photos. The visibility of the rail trail, kind of hard to see in some areas there, and the bicyclists can just drive straight across, so we want to enhance that. Crosswalk locations blocked by parked cars, and then the pavement conditions in pretty poor condition. As part of our design process, we had to look at crash data for the corridor. This a little bit small, but if you kind of can see all those markup and points, we basically look at all the police records and crash data, and each arrow represents a collision and a conflict that happened in the roadway. What we found was that the existing conditions roadway is narrow, and the interaction with on-street parking and all the other users of the roadway, there are a lot of crashes in the vicinity where those red dots are, or red circles are, or north of School Street between High Street, and then around Liberty Street to the south. So some of the goals of the project is to improve intersection and roadway safety. We want to provide wider travel lanes if we can, shoulders and bicycle accommodations, and we want to upgrade the traffic signal at Payson Avenue. Drainage, water and sewer, we're going to install new drainage structures and catch basins, and there's going to be a new water and sewer system that the city's going to look to replace that infrastructure, which is, I think, around 100 years old. The pavement is in very bad shape, so we're going to do a full depth reconstruction, so we're going to pull everything out, put all new pavement and a new base in. There's no bicycle lanes, and people come in, use the Manhan Trail and try to get on the Union Street corridor, and there's no accommodations no accommodations today. The cross-section is a little bit tight when you look from face of building to face of building, so we're kind of limited to what we can and can't do, and we'll get into a little bit more of that in the detail, and I'm sure you'll have some questions for me, and I'll do my best to answer them to explain the design moving forward. Sidewalks and crosswalks, all new sidewalks on both sides of the road. We're going to raise the profile, which means we're going to increase the roadway elevation by 3, 4, 5, 6 inches, depending on where you are, to lessen that sloped sidewalk from the building. So we're going to improve that by bringing the roadway up so you have a more level entranceway from the street to the buildings. We're going to add some rectangular rapid flashing beacons. The main one going to be at the Manhan Rail Trail to bring awareness to the crossing. There is a crosswalk that goes across the Manhan Trail that will be raised. We have a retaining wall as a result of adding in a crosswalk on Cottage Street. There's going to be a little retaining wall over there to accommodate that. A lot of you saw this plan. It's probably a little bit hard to see from this screen, but it was up on the wall and another easel that had it there. But this basically is the design overlaid on an aerial photo. We thought this would be a good representation given the urban nature and the density of the area, so that you could see the existing, the proposed conditions on the existing conditions. And this particular section from High Street down to School Street and to the Manhan Trail, it's going to be a 7-foot parking lane on the east side of the roadway, and we'll have a 6-foot bike lane. So east side is on the top, from the top of the page, working down. 7-foot parking lane, 6-foot bike lane, 11-foot travel lane, and then you'll have your double yellow center line. And then for this particular section of the roadway, we'll have a 13-foot lane with a sharrow, which is 11-foot and a 2-foot shoulder. Can't fit anything more than that because there are a couple buildings that are right at the back of sidewalk, and doesn't give us the luxury of adding additional bike lane in that southbound direction. This is the next stretch, which comes after on the south side of School and Chapman, coming into Railroad Street. Railroad Street's realigned slightly at the intersection to provide the user of Railroad Street more visibility to the Manhan Trail when turning from that street. It also affords us the opportunity to keep the crosswalk on the north side of that intersection. The Manhan Trail will be realigned a little bit to avoid the straight shot through the Union Street corridor. Bicyclists will be encouraged to dismount and cross at the mid-block crossing. We're going to use a brick treatment similar to what's on Cottage Street, if you're familiar with that corridor, and it's going to be raised somewhere around 3 inches or so as a tabletop type crosswalk to bring more awareness to that crossing. When you get beyond there on Liberty Street to the south, as you go to Payson Avenue, the cross-section changes the roadway just a little bit. No on-street parking. There's a 5-foot bike lane, 11-foot travel lanes in both directions, another 5-foot bike lane on the other side, and then obviously sidewalks on the outside edge. There will be a buffer between the large parking lot and the sidewalk to provide a little more separation between any parked cars and those using the sidewalk. The last graphic here shows the improvements at the intersection. Again, we're adding that crosswalk across Cottage Street, maintaining some of the existing parking in front of the businesses through the beginning there. For the most part, the signal will be updated to be the latest and greatest accommodations so that it can activate appropriately with the current traffic loads. But the lane configurations are pretty much staying the same. The driveway to the Riverside building will be part of the signal and will be activated upon when somebody pulls out of the parking lot. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions about on-street parking, and I will say that we looked at this pretty aggressively. It was very hard for us to try to come up with an opportunity to come up with a desirable cross-section without impacting parking spaces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off. There's a chart in the bottom. It's probably hard for you to read, but there's basically 65 parking spaces out there today. So if you're traveling northbound on the easterly side of the road, there's 36. If you're traveling southbound, there's 29, total of 65. If you were to restripe those parking spaces today and to meet current standards, you would lose 8 spaces. So those spaces would go away. 5 of them would be north of the, on the easterly side, and 3 would be on the westerly side. The availability of parking, the city did a count in the morning and the evening, and it varied between 40 and 78%. Typically when parking's around 85% occupied, you tend to say, I need some more parking. So in areas where the highest utilization was happening was more on the upper sections of the street on the easterly side of the roadway, in the central areas where you would imagine near the coffee shop and some of the restaurants that are up in that area. As part of the project, we're going to have 35 parking spaces, so we lose 30 spaces. However, 7 of them are on the easterly side of the roadway, and then 23 are on the westerly side, with the majority of those being the ones in front of the big parking lot in the shopping plaza just on the south side of the Manhattan. And what we did is we tried to maintain the on-street parking where there wasn't adjacent off-street parking. So if there is a business with off-street parking, we were hoping that people would use the off-street parking spaces. And it seemed to make sense to have all the parking on the easterly side, given where all the utilities were and how the design would be, the cross-section would be fit into the constraints. Potential treatments that we'll be looking at as we advance the project. Just some examples here of just enhanced crosswalks, striping, things like that. We're going to do some curb extensions where the crosswalks are along Union Street to get the pedestrian out and standing kind of on the outside edge of the on-street parking, where today they would step out into the roadway and be blocked by parking. This gets them out a little bit to the edge. The new traffic signal would be installed. It'd be, assuming, some sort of black signal or stainless that we would work with the city to make sure we had the appropriate color or feature. And then the flashing beacon, the one on the lower there, that's North Main Street in Springfield, as an example if somebody wanted to see one. That's where that photo comes from. We had one meeting with the businesses and we did some renderings. This is a before and after looking north, just south of the Manhattan Trail. So the Manhattan Trail's in the center of the picture there. And it's a before and after, kind of showing how things might look from a rendering standpoint with the pavement. You see the bike lane on the one side there and the rapid flashing beacon in the middle. The other rendering we did was looking south towards the Manhattan. So you have the bike lane traveling northbound. You can see the bicyclist there in the bike lane, and then you can see the Sherrill and the shared use road path going, the shared lane going in the southbound direction, on-street parking on the easterly side as we talked. And so from us, we submitted 25% designs in February. We're here today doing a public hearing, and then we anticipate final engineering to happen over the next year or so, as Josh had mentioned. So during construction, right now we're anticipating lane shifts and lane closures with alternating traffic during working hours. We're not anticipating any road closures or detours at this time. Although that might be challenging to maintain some of the on-street parking if we were to do that, so it's something we'll look at closer in the next design phase. Time of days for construction anticipated to be somewhere between 7 a.m. and 3:30 with some restrictions depending on traffic flow. We're anticipating 1 to 2 construction seasons, or probably around 18 months. The only environmental permitting that we have is Conservation Commission coordination, either an RDA or an NOI, working within the buffer area of the pond. The next step for us is review comments from this meeting. We're going to advance plans to 75 and then 100%, and then a plan spec and estimate design phase. And then the funding, as Josh noted, is available from the fiscal year 2022 TIP. And now I'll turn it back over to Josh.
Thank you, Matt. Before I open the hearing to questions and comments, I would like to explain that procedure. First, as stated previously, the purpose of this hearing is to solicit your input regarding the project. As the plans are not yet complete, we may not be able to answer all of your questions or respond to all your comments at this time. Next, we ask that anyone who wishes to have his or her comments entered into the official hearing transcript that Walter's taking, please, when you're going to ask your question, stand up, come to the microphone that's right there. Identify yourself by name and whatever you're associated with, a butter, business owner, and spell your last name. This is necessary in order for us to obtain a full verbatim transcript as required by law. Also, the last sheet of the handout is a mail-in sheet. If you'd like to submit them that way, you can do that. It goes straight to the chief engineer and then to me. You may leave this sheet with me tonight, or you may take it back and mail it within 10 days, and it will be part of the official public record. Finally, it is normal procedure to ask any elected officials or town officials to offer their comments first. Are there any federal, state, or local officials that would like to start and kick us off the Q&A phase? Walter, are you using that one?
Which one?
It has to be this one here, if you would, please. Thank you.
Mayor Nicole.
Just don't lean in, just stand up. You're good,
How's
thank
that,
you.
Walter?
You're fine, thank you. Would you spell your name, please?
Nicole.
Thank you.
Last name L-A, capital C-H-A-P-E-L-L-E, and I am the mayor of Easthampton.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank the MassDOT team as well as our consultant and several department heads for coming to the meeting, as well as members of the public. I would like to stress a lot of detail around parking and what we're losing, and also how that will affect the side streets that you mentioned, as well around easements. And when would we be able to get the detail of the 37 easements and so we can start preparing and budgeting for those expenses? Those are my two comments and concerns right now.
You said you have a set of right-of-way plans over there, right?
We have a set of right-of-way plans that are 25%. So usually what happens is 75% design submission, we get into the grading aspect of it. I think after Karen would review the 75% and say that they're sufficient you'd go and work with an appraiser at that point, correct? Once they're approved?
Yeah, we have to have accepted
Once the
right-of-way plans,
75% is approved, that's when the town can begin their acquisition process. That may or may not be all appraisal, but that's when you can begin it.
And the reason for that is because that's a lot of the three-dimensional design, so some of the easements shown there, while the numbers will probably not change, but the areas can fluctuate depending on the final grading.
And then on parking, will the number of parking spaces potentially increase or decrease between now and 75% design?
I don't anticipate them to do either. I'd increase or decrease. I think there was a lot of thought given to what we have shown on the plans. I know there was some discussion about putting some on-street parking on some of the side streets, but we haven't really gotten there yet, and whether that falls outside the purview of this project or not, it's something that we'll continue to work with DPW, but I know that because of the constraints of the buildings right at the back of the sidewalk and the requirements that we need to hit for DOT, for lanes and bikes, and it's really hard for us to maintain anything on both sides of the road today. So something had to, I guess, give a little bit here or there, and we did the very best we could to maintain. I mean, we can continue to look as we get into the final design of it, but right now I don't anticipate anything really changing.
And the city would just want that information if it changes or how it changes, to integrate that with our recently started and almost complete downtown strategic plan that addresses parking, especially with the three properties, the school properties between Maple Street School Center, and Pepin being decommissioned as schools and just potentially.
Yeah, and I've been working closely with DPW and planning on every step of the way, so I would imagine that would continue. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other elected officials before we open it up to everybody? Okay. Then this hearing is now open to the public. We welcome your questions and comments. Just remember to step up to the mic and say your last name and affiliation and spell your last name, please.
Hi, my name's Eli Damon, Elidanon. And I know I talked to some of you privately, but this is really important to me. So I want to say it publicly. I'm a Easthampton resident, and I'm also an instructor and board member for the American Bicycling Education Association. And while I'm very happy with most of the elements, I'm very concerned about the bike-related elements. So these bike lanes have almost all of the elements that my program shows that are reasons why you might not want to use a bike lane. And I can't go into all the details right here. Also, the diversion of the trail of the Manhan. It seems like it's going to be very inconvenient for people for traffic on the Manhan to have to make all those tight turns, especially those who are using like a cargo bike or a trailer or a tandem, any bike that's larger than a normal bike, and also the sharrows on Cottage Street I saw were installed partially in the door zone rather than in a proper lane control position, and so I also want to make sure that the sharrow placement is correct when you do Union Street. And yeah, that is all. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just add a few things. So our design team, we do have bicycle experts that are on our design team that are also bicycle instructors. They're also on various national committees levels of bicycle training on the federal level as well, and they're plugged into this project as a review and to provide guidance as we move forward. Eli and I did talk beforehand. We'll review his comments and bring them back to the team. But there are other constraints that lead to certain things that are in this plan that kind of lean us one way or another. But we appreciate his comments, and we will go through them.
Jonathan, Jonathan, Frost, F-R-O-S-T, 250 Main Street, Easthampton, resident. And my concerns, some of them were addressed. I'm a disabled person, and one of the things that's really lacking all over Easthampton, but certainly on Union and Cottage, are curb cuts that are proper. The next item, as far as the sidewalks go, with this new design, or when it's finalized, are the sidewalks going to be flat with whatever it is, eighth inch per, whatever it is, the slope for drainage?
The 1.5% slope for, yes. So as you're familiar probably with the sidewalk today, specifically on the easterly side, as you come out some of those buildings, it might come out flat or it might come out ramp down and level out. So one of the things we're doing, because we're going to be fully reconstructing the roadway, and we're also going to be doing water, sewer, and drainage improvements, is that we're going to bring Union Street up between 3, 4, 5 inches, it varies, so that we can bring the curb up and we can bring the sidewalk up, so it's more of an easier transition going to the buildings, and you don't have that steep drop-off that you see today. So from a handicap accessibility standpoint, that'll be a big improvement.
Okay, and kind of related to Eli's comment, with regards to the bike path, the way it is currently constructed, bicyclists and motorists are both at fault quite often. And I've got tons of video of different examples of that if you'd like to read afterwards. So I think what probably would make for a good idea while you're trying to integrate the bike path for all manner and size of bicycles, that there is something that is going to further remind bicyclists you need to stop, you need to get off and cross the street, which is state law, correct? Can anybody confirm that? No? No, it's not. No, it's not? Okay. All right, good. But there's got to be something, hopefully, more done to try to calm down the bicycle riders that ride right through without even looking or stopping, and the cars that are going too fast. I'm not sure what the solution for that is, but I've just seen, you know, tons of problems over the last 5 years.
So one of the things we're doing in that area, and this is zoomed in on the Manhan Trail, but for the reasons you have stated, you know, people are going straight up and down the Manhan and crossing without giving really any thought of stopping. But there will be signage and some redirection on the trail to dismount and cross. The cross section through there, the pavement cross section, you can see the curb line is being narrowed. So that as you come through that section of roadway, it won't be as wide of a pavement cross-section today. And then that red is a brick pattern that's going to be a tabletop crossing of about 2 to 3 inches or so, so that if you are a motorist that's driving on Union Street, you have to go over that, and that'll bring awareness to the Manhan Trail. In addition to the rapid flashing beacon that'll be there, so when somebody comes up to cross, it'll strobe
The
flash.
bicyclist would have to push a button.
Correct. Yep.
Wow.
Now for his point.
I'm all for that. And for the sidewalks again, you say you're going to bring it up. What's the profile going to look like if you know now? So if I'm using my walker going down either side of Union Street, is there going to be still a lot of places you could just walk right into the door without a step up, or what's our ADA accommodations going to be?
So the ADA accommodations into the buildings won't change, but the sidewalk across the front of the buildings won't be as steep if you're walking along
Right,
with
that's the usual.
so from right to left or left to right, whatever, it won't be steep that way. So the curb's going to come up, which will come up with the profile of the roadway, and then you'll ramp down at every driveway, and so the driveway aprons will be redone to current standards, so that when you're crossing at a driveway, it's essentially, you won't have that situation I think you were mentioning before about having a lip or something where your walker couldn't get across.
Yeah, my concern is just like right now there's like Manchester's hardware, because I remember you can walk on the sidewalk, you can walk right in the front door. There's no step, there's nothing.
That'll remain. That'll be the same. Yep. Yep.
And that would be the same for every
Correct.
property. All right, great. Thank
Yep.
you so much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Dan Rist, D-A-N-R-I-S-T. I'm Easthampton City Council. I'm sorry I didn't come up when you asked, but I thought of a question.
It's okay.
I am concerned about how much transparency and communication you've had with the businesses being affected. I know you said you met with a number of the businesses, and I'm wondering if you can characterize the reaction. Was it positive? I'm concerned that they have as much information as they can get about how this project is being designed, and that they are completely informed. And secondly, the second part of that question is, especially with right-of-ways and the fact that we may need to take some right-of-way needs from these businesses, these property owners, have they been appraised yet, or are you still at the early stage of how much you might need for that? So 2 parts to that question.
So I'll take them in reverse order because that last one's easy. We haven't started the appraisal process yet. We're not there yet. I think, as Karen had said previously, we have to go through the next design stage, the 75% design stage, which would probably be that submission would be this summer, June-ish, May, June-ish, somewhere around there. And once that happens, then that process, and they'll be notified.
But we're not talking about a lot of land here.
No.
We're talking minor.
No, because we're constrained, basically. We're constrained by the buildings. There's not a lot of real estate out there to take in, but, you know, a lot of it is for, the temporary easements are a lot for transitioning some of the sidewalks into existing conditions, working outside the layout for those sidewalks. Some wheelchair ramps that might need to be outside, might be more of a permanent easement where we're in a constraint on a corner property. As far as the business meeting, I think it was June of 2018 that we had a meeting with the business owners. I think we had about 18 people that were there. This same presentation was provided at that meeting, although the design has been enhanced a little bit, but basically the theme of the cross-section, the bike lanes, the parking, ran through all the parking impacts and the constraints we had to try to accommodate parking needs. The city also went and met, and we worked on the crosswalk locations, so a lot of that was based on feedback from them. I'd like to say that they understood why we couldn't put parking where everybody wanted parking, and I wasn't booed out of the room. I think it was a pretty positive meeting. Whether people were very disappointed, I can't speak to that unless Jeff can add anything more.
I was going to say is
I'm sorry, if you're not at one of my mics, I don't hear a word you're saying. We'll try that one.
I'm Jeff Bagg,
Yeah, you just stand normal.
BAGG, city planner. I just wanted to articulate that for the June 2018 meeting and this meeting we sent written notices in the mail to property owners and business owners along Union Street.
So as much information as you can give them along the way, I would certainly recommend that. I know you probably do that as you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Pasqualina Azzarello,
You don't have to lean into it, just stand normally.
Pasqualina. Last name is Azzarello.
Thank you.
I'm the city arts coordinator for the city of Easthampton, and I'm also a resident and local artist. And I would just encourage you all to strongly consider adding into the redesign some sightings and footprints for public art. Easthampton City Arts has a public art subcommittee. The whole city is finding how arts is really helping the city develop in very positive ways. There have been other recent development of the Nashwanik Pond Promenade and some places along the Manhattan Rail Trail where concrete footprints are added to support public sculpture. It's a real asset to the improvements, and we have like a team of people, ready to help to occupy that through open public calls, etc. So I hope that makes it to your discussions.
Sure.
Can you explain what a concrete footprint is? Is that
There are two along the Nashwanik Pond Promenade, and they're great examples. They're a little different from each other, but basically what's great about it is that you all could determine where a good place to put a public sculpture would be.
Got it.
It would fit into the design rather than coming in at a later time trying to find a way to make something nice happen. You all would allocate a certain amount of space. There are examples of them. We have them here in Easthampton. They work. We are raising money for another public sculpture on Cottage Street now for the second of those footprints. So it's just a really, it's a very efficient way to sort of move forward and to continue to add art and public sculpture to our landscape. And I think especially when there are these new improvements, it's a missed opportunity to not fold that in to what it is you're doing already. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's something we definitely could look into. So if I could get your information after, that'd be great.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to talk to you more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Campbell, Cheryl. Last name Campbell is Campbell. I am the owner of Elon Hair Salon on 95 Union Street, formerly sat on the Community Development Board as well. And my concerns are more of the gas pipes underneath the street instead of the beautification of the top of the streets. Over 10 years ago, we had a gas leak in the sidewalk out front of the business. I was told it wasn't the first, I wouldn't be the last, and I haven't heard anything about gas pipes being replaced. Are they going to be fixed with the water and sewer? Because our gas pipes are so old that nobody knows when they were put in, and they're way past being in need of being replaced.
So we did have a utility meeting, a utility walk with the various utility owners. The gas obviously is not owned by the city. I don't know if they were on that walk, but we can make sure we reach out to them, and if there's any...
I thought that was the holdup in redoing the surface of the road, is what I was told, that they couldn't redo the surface until they replaced all of the gas and utility pipes. So it really makes no sense to make bicycle safety lanes and art platforms and all of this if, in fact, it can all blow up because our gas pipes haven't been fixed.
Absolutely. So we need to make sure now's the time to do it, and we need to
I
get that
also
included.
have parking concerns because I only own 1 foot off my property, off my building, all the way around. So I currently rent parking for my tenants and my customers because I have a beauty salon. I have 2 parking spaces that are the city's out front of my business. I would like to know if those will remain or if those will be taken away. There is no parking on the opposite side of the street. I'm directly across from Railroad Street. And I do agree with the bicycle safety. All the beautification is awesome, but I do believe that the bicyclists should get off the bikes and cross because I have witnessed many accidents out front of the hair salon. So if you'd like to contact me, I did sign it. I will write down any other concerns that I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jessica Thayer, Jessica-Thayer, and I currently reside at 116 Pleasant Street. I have a couple of concerns. First, I want to reiterate off of the former comment that was made. I'm not an expert, and I know you have tons of experts out there, but I know that if you have a bike lane in between cars, between where parking is and where cars are traveling, that bike is going to be watching both sides. And if it only takes one person to throw their door open. It's not even just about turning, it just takes one person to throw their door open and a full stop. I have lost 3 friends to accidents like that. I don't know what the crash data is, and I know you analyze risk, but all it takes is one, and I don't want to lose one person in the city. Secondarily, you made some comments, and I had specific questions, I guess, as to alternative forms of roadway surfaces. We've noticed, it was like point number 1, that we have poor road conditions on the street, and that has continued to be a problem, especially with grading. I know we want to raise it up, and usually one of the hang-ups to implementing to new types of alternative roadways like concrete is that it has a large cost to implement, or you have to do a no salt year for the first year or 2. And then it causes pitting, which doesn't have quite the same reconstruction. Whereas right now, we keep cracking so much that we have to go all the way down, and that is bringing our taxes up. We already have a tax problem in the city. Asphalt has about a 5-year replacement rate, generally, from what I know. And concrete tends to last more, but then again, high weather areas. So I know you guys analyzed this in 2013 when you said you were looking over the data, but I couldn't find that data. I did find, however, that asphalt prices have risen 25% per year over the past 3 years alone. So even at a 25% increase at a cost of this project, if we go over 10%, the town is at risk for that. So I just want to know if there were any more considerations given to different types of materials for this roadway.
Well, the funding part is still 80/20 on the main funding category, so unless it was something non-participating like the water and sewer work, then it wouldn't be paid for by the town. I don't know if you want to speak about the second part of the question with the roadway conditions and the asphalt.
So, as part of our design, we look to design the pavement life for 20 years. So right now, the full depth reconstruction for this project is to go and take all the asphalt off, redo the base, and then do all the infrastructure work underground, but then build that solid base. And what the problem is out there today is that the substructure under the asphalt is failing, or has failed, or is poor material. So we're gonna get the right material in there to build it up so that the asphalt doesn't last 5 years. It lasts much longer than that, whether it's 15 or 20 years or what have you, but that would be the goal here. If you don't replace the base, then just replacing the top asphalt component of it might give you 5 years or even less, depending on the situation under that.
Correct. I was just wondering if an analyzation was done, a cost analysis was done between using something like asphalt, and if that has changed, and if that could be made available for transparency.
So asphalt's a traditional selection for pavement. There have been a few intersections that were done in concrete. There's not that many in this area. I think Route 33 in Chicopee is probably one of the only last corridors that have some form of asphalt. But over time, it has to be reinforced. You have to put steel in it as well, or it cracks and fails because of the heaving and frost and what have you. So it's not a very common practice to use concrete in our designs in New England. It was something DOT experimented in years ago, but now it's getting pulled out because after less than, it's more expensive to replace it or repair it in the long run. So there was no analysis to compare asphalt versus concrete, but we did look at other alternatives for design. Full depth reconstruction is, I think, the preferred that we're looking at. There's also what they call reclamation, which they go through and they rip off all the asphalt, they grind it all up, and then they mix it all in the sub-base, and then they use that as the base, and they put that on, and that could be an alternative for this project when we finish our design, because we are raising the profile, because when we do that type of treatment, we tend to increase the profile, but we get the same design life, because now we're adding the aggregate from grinding up the pavement in the sub-base, and it gives it more durability. So those are the traditional methods. I mean, obviously just taking the asphalt away and putting it down would be another one that we did look at, but that would have been less than 10 years, 5 years, and that is something, I don't have that information here, but it was part of the submission, a pavement report where we went out and we did collect test pits and got the soil materials and the asphalt, and there was a method to the
But
madness.
just to be clear, that concrete wasn't something that was looked at, just because it's not traditional.
And it's very expensive to install and maintain, yes.
Install and maintain, but again, changing prices in asphalt as well.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ben Gagnon, B-E-N-G-A-G-N-O-N, and I live on Orchard Street. A couple of points I want to bring up, one of which has to do with Cottage Street. I mean, I frequent both as a pedestrian. After the Cottage Street reconstruction, which was great and wonderful, and really appreciate the job that was done there, but one of the side effects that incurred was increased travel speed with prospective vehicles. Hey, everything's nice and smooth and fast, and let's do 45 down Cottage Street. And so one of the, I mean, that settled down somewhat after people got over the elation of having a nice paved roadway, but that is a concern of mine post Union Street reconstruction, is that if you're aiming to increase clearances, reduce traffic congestion, and all these other improvements to improve throughput, that will have a negative effect, at least initially, in terms of safety, with increased travel speeds from vehicles looking to take advantage of roadway improvements. So one of I mean, Union Street is a very congested spot. It's very busy. A lot of parking, a lot of small business, a lot of side streets. One of my possible suggestions is that at least in addition to the increased elevation associated with the improved crossing at the Manhan Trail, that one or more of the additional crosswalks be elevated additionally in order to create like speed humps that would limit that would artificially limit the speed of the vehicles to 20-25 miles per hour as posted on the street. I mean, considering that you're ripping everything up anyway, and what is it, dirt underneath there? I don't know. I'm making stuff up, but being a longtime pedestrian of Union Street, even though I've lived in town just a little over a year, but I've been working in town about 7 years, and my fear is for the outcome of this to increase vehicle throughput and put a negative impact on pedestrian safety. So that's one of the concerns that I want to bring up. The other concern, and this is really just an idea. I don't have any idea what its feasibility is. I'm looking for feedback on that, because there are ownership rights, ownership issues. I'm not sure what belongs to the town, what belongs to private ownership, but I'm pretty sure that when I say the Pride Station, it would get some sort of reaction from the crowd, but because the Pride Station at the corner of School Street and Union is a very high traffic point. The business has 2 entrance and exits on Union and 1 on School Street. I'm not sure why all 3 have to be there. I'm not sure if this is something that can be addressed or was even evaluated, but certainly the entrance to the Pride Station closest to School Street on the western side of the street has a high volume of traffic from Union Street, right and left turning into that entrance. And from a pedestrian's perspective, it can be very difficult to negotiate just walking down the street on the western side either direction, because you don't know if a left turn signal or right turn signal is meant for School Street or the Pride Station or both if a driver decides to change his mind and get gas at the last possible second. So I'm wondering if under consideration might be both to delete that one of those entrances to the Pride Station, and perhaps even move the crosswalk that is a little further up the street. I don't know if you've got the whatever.
It's right here.
Further down south, so that it would bridge the gap between the north side of Chapman and the south sidewalk side of School Street. That location for a crosswalk would give a considerable amount of pedestrian control to the intersection without with possibly providing even more traffic opportunities for vehicle travel from Union to School and back and reverse, and also from Chapman to Union. So those are my 2 suggestions that I funk up last night when I read the PDF document. I don't know if you have any feedback.
Were those anything that was looked at?
I mean, the only thing I can say is that we can work closely with the city and reach out to the property owner and have the discussions about either consolidating driveways or altering traffic flow. But ultimately, I think the project doesn't have the jurisdiction to do that. But we can certainly have that conversation and see if there's something that could happen there. There could be, because that site is so tight, the deliveries for gas deliveries and other sorts, those 2 curb cuts in the front might be there for just that sole reason of getting a large vehicle. Those tanker trucks can be pretty big, and to get in and out, that might be the only movement that is accommodated. So
understood.
Yeah.
Good factor. What about the additional concerns about increased speed on the?
So for the, we can look at putting in maybe another rapid flashing beacon up near High Street. We can work with the police department and the fire department on seeing if they would be, and maintenance, to see if they would be accommodating to have, another tabletop crosswalk.
Yeah.
We can have that discussions. I can't promise that we can do it. I know they become a maintenance and an emergency nuisance, but it is something that we can certainly have those discussions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Josh Sahoza. I live on 19. Oh, I'm sorry. We own a business on Union Street and also live on Chestnut Street in town.
Excuse me, before you continue, can you spell your last name, please?
It's S-U-C-H-O-Z.
Thank you.
Speak louder, please.
I can't hear you either.
All right. So my question just has to do if there are any plans for accessibility to the businesses during the sidewalk construction. I have experience working on a street that has undergone a similar project, and we were left with like wooden planks from the door to the street that was being, and it made it very hard for customers and clients to access the businesses. And also the second part of that is if there are any studies done on impact of similar projects on small business.
So first, I guess, what business is yours?
We're at 46.
Okay. Which is, what's the, sorry, I don't know exactly the numbers, but where are you? Are you on this map? Okay. Okay. I will say that there'll be a resident from the Department of Transportation that'll be on site, and that'll work closely with the city to advise on construction process and schedule. They'll have to submit a schedule of where they're doing work, what kind of work they're doing. They have to maintain access to buildings, whether it's foot access or vehicular access. I can't speak to the means that will be provided, wood planks to doorways and things like that. I don't know if that's a common practice or not. I don't do that kind of work, but I know that DOT does everything that they can do to make sure they will bring the attention of the project and the process to you, and they'll work with you to provide some sort of accessibility that will be maintained when they're doing work in front of your business and the project as a whole. I don't know if the other project that you were working on was a DOT project or not, but I know DOT stays on top of these things pretty well during construction.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Marcia, M-A-R-C-I-A, Morrison, M-O-R-R-I-S-O-N. I'm a resident and also co-chair of the Cottage Street Cultural District. First of all, I want to just reinforce the idea of putting places for art along Union Street. I was part of the 2013 walk up Union Street, take a look, see what's up, and there were trees around. When we saw plans, there were trees put in places. I want to encourage that, to break up what exists, to make it, tie it in a little bit more with Cottage Street, for instance, and Main Street. And secondly, we did work on Cottage Street. We still do not have a street sign in this city that says Cottage Street. And I don't know, since you're going to be down there in that area working on the crosswalk, if you could get somebody to give us a street sign that says Cottage Street. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jim Gracia, G-R-A-C-I-A, Easthampton resident or town employee. I want to bring to your attention some drainage issues that may not have been obvious unless there's a torrential downpour. We've noticed it a few years ago. The water runs fine down Union, but when it gets to the bottom at the Riverside Industries corner, it surcharges and goes over the sidewalk. In the past, it had gone into the building. Some goes down their driveway. I think the issue was not so much the size of the mains in the street, it's the inlet capacity. There wasn't sufficient inlet capacity to get the water into the pipes. So since we're going to be doing this, that's one issue that should be corrected at the same time.
Nice to see you, Jim. Thank you. At that end, do you think a double catch basin to improve the capacity flow into the pipe would be of sufficient?
Well, we do, I think there's a double there now.
Oh, okay.
I think we have to intercept some further up toward the 7-Eleven.
Okay.
Try to reduce the amount that gets to the bottom of the hill.
Okay. Appreciate your comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Jose Mediavilla, Josemediavilla. I just want to share thoughts that came to mind. I want to reiterate the ideas of trees, please, more trees. For the record, climate science is real, and yes, we can definitely use more trees to sequester carbon. Any other opportunities to sequester carbon, preferably with native, perennial, edible plants. And about the water catchment, so it seems like this part of the street is a hill, and if you start from the top and look at opportunities to redirect water to be able to soak into the landscape is most preferable. Looking at it from a permaculture design landscape opportunity, because the more water that you can soak into the landscape, you're recharging aquifers, and seems to be beneficial since the city drains aquifers pretty fast, growing population. And the only other thing that I can think of is what I've seen that's pretty neat, because I pick up cigarette butts pretty often in the streets, and just one cigarette butt can intoxicate many volumes of water with arsenic and benzene. And what I've seen some cities do is they have this metal mesh that goes underneath the heavy one that you put on top, and it requires some maintenance, making sure that it gets cleaned every once in a while, but it would catch the cigarette butts and prevent it from getting into the system on the ground. And that's all I can think about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Patrick Bruff, PatrickBrough. I'm at 107 Briggs Street in Easthampton. I have a couple of thoughts. I'm going to ask the first question, and I know the city planner and somebody's going to say no, Pat, but I'm going to ask anyway. While we're digging up the road, can we bury all the wires on all the telephone poles? Thinking about when you drive up and down Union Street, as far as the space that you have there, there's not a lot of space. As you know, as everyone has seen here, you're digging up the road. I know it's not as easy as just taking the wires off and putting them down, but along those lines, during this process, will you be removing any telephone poles? Is that kind of part of the process? Are we getting new telephone poles if they're not burying them, which I would like you to do, but that was the first question. The next one is is a question about the crosswalks. Everything looks great as what you've shown here. My question is, if you've ever driven down Union Street at night, when it's raining, or even at night in general, those crosswalks, they're generally dark. It's just dark in the areas of where the crosswalks are. So if there's any lighting, and I'm not talking about the press the button across the street, I'm talking about specifically a light over the crosswalk or somewhere in that general area that will help people see, will help the drivers see people even standing there to cross. Let's see, so lights, crosswalks, I had one more one. So during the construction, I know you've talked a little bit about reaching out to the business owners and talking to them about, kind of in keeping them up to date as far as what's happening. I know we're, still kind of in the, 25% process or stage here. I think one of the most important things that the MassDOT can do is work with the city and work with the business owners that are there every single day that are going to have to live through this. I think the project is needed. I think, it's one of those things that's got to happen, but it's going to inconvenience some people, and I get it. We need to have this inconvenience to make the project work. However, the most the most information that we can give them and talking to the business owners about what's happening on a day-to-day basis. I was here when we did, or I shouldn't say we, the MassDOT replaced the Manhan Bridge. I was the chamber president at the time, and I worked really closely with MassDOT folks. I met with them pretty much every other week to kind of get an update as to what was happening, when traffic was going to open. I think if you can do that for the business owners that are up on Union Street, they're going to be affected, you know, every single day. If you can talk to them, if you have to close the street for whatever particular reason, talk to these business owners, because they're not all open Monday through Friday. So there may be days when you say, all right, we're going to have to close the street for a day. Let's see when everyone's closed that particular day, versus just kind of, we're going to close the street on Friday night when it's their, you know, busiest day of the week. So if you could really work closely, and I'd be happy to help however I can with getting the information out to the business owners and the people who live on the street too, because I know I say business owners, but there are some residents that live on the street as well. So I think that said enough.
Absolutely. We would have our resident engineer can definitely do that. Can continue to reach out as we have along the process to town employees and residents and business owners and whatnot, everybody. And any changes can be an ongoing discussion at that point.
Can you bear the wires?
So I'll field that one. So it is something that we talked about when we first started this project, but unfortunately the cost to do so is so significant, and that's what is considered a betterment in most communities, and something that federal and state funding will pay for.
Okay.
So that would be a total burden on the cost of the taxpayers in town, which we're talking millions of dollars to get that done. So that's that, but we did consider it. And the utility poles, for the most part, most of them I think are on the easterly side of the roadway, and we're trying to hold that curb, maybe bring the curb out 8 or like 10 or 12 inches just to give a little more buffer from those poles. There might be a few poles down on the south side of Manhan that have to get reset, but for the most part I think they're going to stay. We will be looking for ways to add lighting on those existing poles. If we can add another wood pole with a light near crossing, then that's something that will be done as part of the next part of the design.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Charlene Gentes. I'm president and CEO.
Speak up, please.
Hi, my name is Char Gentes, president and CEO. I will spell my name. It is Charlene. Last name is Gentes. First, I'm here on behalf of all of Riverside with big gratitude for the new crosswalk. Thank you, Mayor, for all your support and advocacy. It takes us about 15-20 minutes literally to get to the boardwalk right now. We've got to cross so many streets to get there. So I spoke to you earlier. I just want to confirm that there will be a push button that will light up so that when people are crossing there, people will see that people are trying to cross.
Yep. All the crosswalks at that intersection, there's 3 of them now. The 4th one will come across Cottage Street, and it will be push button, countdown.
Go lights.
Yep.
We absolutely need that. There's been a lot of advocacy for, some people hate me because I've asked for it. There's no turn on red. Some love me. I'll take the people who love me. My job is to make sure that my people are safe. And my 185 employees are safe. My 275 clients are safe. That's my job. And so thank you, Mayor, and everybody for that. I would like to emphasize the light on Union Street. So that first crosswalk on Union Street that's right by our building, you can't see, and people are still turning on red, even though they're not supposed to. And it's very dangerous there because you can't see. So I want to reiterate any light that could be brought there. And then the sidewalks. So anyone who utilizes a wheelchair, and I think you spoke to maybe that sidewalk's going to be widened, so whatever can happen there, right, before the bridge, that area where the new where the new crosswalk's gonna be, that would be helpful.
So in that area where it's dark, where the pedestrian's crossing, the curb line's actually coming out
It is
5 or
beautiful.
6 feet or so. So that crossing there will be shorter.
Okay. Hopefully that helps in, but
But
people
we'll
just
look
don't
at
see.
the lighting too and see if we can add something on a pole that's nearby.
That would be great, and even if we can do something from our building, we're willing to
Okay.
do that. And Jim already said it, but I want to reiterate, you can't believe the water that comes in our front doors. So when I heard that things are being raised 2 feet and that, I'm like, oh my God. So to please be cautious of that, because literally it comes down the side parking lot, goes down the canal, but most of it comes right in our front door and side door. So anything we can do to prevent that, that'd be great. I think that was it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, Jose Mediavilla. I need to respell my name. Or...
No, you're good. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I remembered a few other things. So people, when the light is...
I'm sorry.
When the light is red here, there's people still turn right. So if you're gonna add this, can you please tell them not to turn right on that? I don't know, maybe you already thought about that, I'm not sure. But and I honestly do not believe that there is space for a bike lane. I've been walking the streets often, and it seems like the cars are always right beside where the parking is, and people are even afraid to go into their cars when cars are passing by because there's not much space. And as well, I'd like to share a few stories. I've seen a little girl, 4 years old, crossing the bike path, and a truck came by, and the mother was scared to death. He went inches in front of her as she was crossing, and I even was crossing that bike path crosswalk, and a car slowed down, and I began to walk. And then the truck just started to speed up. And he said that you're not in Northampton, you almost got hit. So there's a sort of an attitude that's about the people and their vehicles, about that area. And there have been so many incidents. I think that whatever efforts there are to get cars to slow down, that you should probably think of doubling it somehow. And I would even recommend a camera in that area to monitor the vehicles that are passing there, just because of the attitude of the people that are there. I don't know if 2 inches elevation is going to do it, or other measures that you all have planned so far. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rachel Phillips, Phillips. I want to tag on to something that Jose said. Easthampton could benefit from all cars knowing that pedestrians have the right of way in crosswalks, and I wonder if there might be some signage put up during this project that does reiterate that pedestrians do have the right of way in a crosswalk, and that bicycles should dismount when they are crossing.
The appropriate signage will be put for every crosswalk.
Really?
And for the path, yes.
Terrific.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheryl Campbell again. Something on your behalf, just so everyone knows, once the sidewalks get raised, that's going to help with a lot of the water. It's also going to, with the abutments or whatever you call them, at the bike path, because I'm out there and I see all the accidents, a lot of that is going to slow the cars down, which needs to be, when you raise the sidewalk and the cross path, that's not going to allow the cars to pass on the right, which they do. I personally have come to a complete stop to let people cross, and I've had people go around me on the right-hand side. That is how people are getting hit. The cars don't want to stop. I also am a landlord, so feel free to call me because I need to know how people are going to get in and out of their apartments. and things like that. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Jonathan Frost spoke earlier. I have a couple of critical questions. If all this is said and done, what's going to be the impact for, say, a food delivery company that needs to deliver to a restaurant on Union Street or in that area? As far as, is there going to be enough room for somebody, it doesn't sound like it, to, if there's a very large truck making a delivery, is all the traffic just going to come to a halt in that direction? Or is there somehow still going to be enough room that when you're driving, you could still get around that big truck without hopefully not hitting the people coming the other direction?
I mean, I don't know exactly when or how deliveries are coming in today, but I by delineating at least the on-street parking and the bike lanes, if they're making a delivery in the front and using those parking spaces, then they would be encouraged to use those spaces to make deliveries. If they're pulling up against the curb, I don't know if there's any regulations in the city that prohibit that, but hopefully they would make those deliveries when traffic volumes were lower, not peak periods and things like that, which I think most of them would typically do anyway. We can't provide anything from a delivery standpoint for delivery parking other than what we have on the plan already. So that's a component of the project that I guess we can work with the business owners to find out when and how they come in for deliveries and see if there's anything we can do to further enhance the ability to make those deliveries. But in talking with all the business owners now, that's something that hasn't come up as a concern.
My concern would be that if you look at Main Street in Northampton, a lot of the folks that need to get deliveries of food or supplies or whatever, a lot of the trucks have to park over the double yellow line, and we're talking not a van, not a car, we're talking most vehicle weight over 15,000 pounds to a full 51-foot semi on occasion. So it's something I think needs to be considered, whether it's at the level of DOT or the mayor and the city council need to be looking at that and what kind of impact future businesses or changing ownership of a restaurant, how that might affect the flow of traffic. My second question is about the possibility of putting in some speed bumps on Union Street, like right either side of the bike path might be a good spot. It may be in a few other places along the length of Union Street that makes sense. But I think that would do quite a bit to slow people down. I kind of wish we still had those on Cottage Street. So for that, I will say thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Rachel Roberts, RACHEL ROBERTS. I'm an abutter on Chapman Ave, resident homeowner, frequent pedestrian, bicycle user, and public transportation user. I agree with a lot of the points made already, and maybe we'll just second, speak a little bit louder. Sorry. Just agree for the sake of kind of bumping the idea of an additional raised crosswalk further down, heading north, I guess, just for traffic calming purposes. I definitely agree that people tend to drive quickly on newly paved roads. I think some of the, the cut-in crosswalks will help that, but another, bump that makes people slow down is a great idea. I had also been concerned looking, I'm excited about the idea of bike paths. I ride my bike from the bike path to Chapman Ave frequently. It's like a short portion of a block, and yet I'm kind of like, nail biting, sweating the whole time because people really come up close to you there. No, there's very little clearance between bikes, and then of course if someone opened their door, it would all be over. And for that same reason, I know space is tight, and I applaud the fact that you are looking at the option of taking out parking, which I do see as empty a lot of the time. I don't think we need the amount that we have. I'm sure you're down to the inch here and what's really possible, but have you looked at the option of putting the bike lane on the passenger side of parked vehicles so that it's, rather than traffic, bikes, parking, sidewalk, it's traffic, parking, bikes, sidewalk, which is a much more, I see most new bike lanes being built in a lot of cities and towns in the Boston area, for example, in that order, and I think it may involve an extra curb, and perhaps that's why it's not being looked at here, because you're losing another 6 or 8 inches, but I think it's been proven that greatly increased safety. Most people, unfortunately, are single passenger occupancy vehicles, and there is no passenger, so the likelihood of being doored is much less. People tend to look on that side. Additionally, from a public transport standpoint, I'm wondering if there's any option or has been looked into putting a bus shelter on the Rite Aid side of the street. Right now there's one in front of the senior center if you're taking the R41 to Northampton, but nothing if you're going to Holyoke. People wait out in the rain all the time, and it's pretty narrow, so I don't know if there's room for a bus shelter there, but I think that would be very helpful. Definitely maintaining access for the bus to pull over safely, obviously very important. And I think this was mentioned earlier in the context of the Pride Station, and it seemed like maybe this is more of a right-of-way issue, but the 7-Eleven gas station on the opposite side of the street has a curb cut that lasts the entire width of the property, meaning that someone parking can just drive out anywhere on that. So as a pedestrian, you're pretty much in the road the entire time you're passing in front of the business. I think the way that their parking is kind of, perpendicular to the building might make it tricky to rearrange it, but from a pedestrian standpoint, it's a very dangerous spot, and I think it would be great if that could be looked at. I think in the 2013, original study that had been brought up. Yeah. So, and additionally, I guess I was just wondering if you could define or lead me to a website where I could learn more about exactly what complete streets is, because I'm getting the impression it's like a kind of, a term that means something quite specific, and I'm assuming it's about integrating pedestrians and cars and bikes, but just curious kind of what it is that you're using.
Yeah, it's a full initiative supported by the Secretary and the Governor and everybody to be more inclusive of all modes of transportation, safer for everybody. Yeah, and it's been revamped and improved over time, and we have a bike guide and some other things that all kind of are intertwined with that, but it's a policy and an initiative is what it is.
Right. Can anyone speak directly to whether or not that other bike lane arrangement has been considered?
I'm ready to go. You ready? I can speak to it.
Okay, yeah.
So first off, I'll go in reverse order. The 7-Eleven, it's up on the screen there, but the low reveal there in the curb will be fixed. The 2 driveways will be defined. I think there's a couple bollards there that are protecting the hydrant from people from backing into it.
I didn't realize it was a low curb. I thought it was just...
Yeah, I mean, I think the driveway's pretty defined there, and so where you won't have that flat, continuous open driveway, so that'll be better defined. We'll look at the bus shelter at the Rite Aid.
Anywhere on that side of the street, really.
It is tight. It's a tight.
Yeah.
You have some overhead signs that are coming off the sides of the building facades, and things like that. And the other thing to that is we do work with PVTA to find out where their stops are. If they want to consolidate, do they want to stop? Because ultimately, it depends on the ridership. If they really want a stop there, they usually would maintain the shelter if it's installed. But we can certainly ask them on this side of the street if there's something we can look into. The additional raised crosswalk that was brought up, the complete streets, like Josh said, there's a couple different policies. If you Google MassDOT complete streets policy or healthy transportation initiatives, there are things out there that describe what those policies are, and there are other manuals that go with that as well. You could probably get some of that information. On the reversing the parking and the bike lanes, we did look at that. We looked at ways to do a shared use path. We looked at taking the bike lane and putting it on the inside. Unfortunately, that requires more width. We don't have we're to the inch, but almost. You know, I like to say we're not building a watch, but we're pretty close to it. But we looked at that. There would be a lot of impact to utility poles, and then the business's public space would be lost. We'd have to take it for right away for a handicap accessible path. So the businesses that have tables and chairs and things out there today would have to go away. There wasn't a way to kind of, we felt that was more disruptive to the businesses and to the corridor, and a lot of that sidewalk that's from that stretch from Chapman up, as you know, it's pretty wide, and if we were to do a bike lane and do a two-tier bike lane, like I think you were talking about having the bike lane and the pedestrians so that you wouldn't have bikes flying by doors and people stepping out and getting hit by a bicycle, that requires the curb to come out a lot further, which means parking gets lost, and whatever parking's left that we have on that one side would have to be impacted. I mean, we did look at it, but it does add, by the time you add the buffers and everything else for both sides and try to get that cross section to work, it either takes away from the public space entirely, or the private space entirely, or it's a combination of the two, and it's just something that I think was not, would have been desirable, I guess, to the businesses.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
My name is Marvin Ward, M-A-R-V-I-N, W-A-R-D, and she stole all my thunder because the first thing I was going to ask about is the 7-Eleven block-long curb cut, which I guess is going to go away and get more contained. But I also was going to talk about the possibility of putting the bike lane between the sidewalk and the cars on the other side. There are some streets in Northampton where that's done, South Street in particular, but there are probably others. I do recognize that there's not a lot of room there. I'm a member of the Joint Transportation Committee of the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, so I know some of these people who are sitting here in front of us and see them regularly. I have been a member of that since 2006. So I've got a lot of history. And there's information about complete streets available at the Planning Commission. You don't have to go to Boston to get it. And it's a really terrific program, and I've watched it evolve and get better and better and better as the years have gone by. I live right across the street here in that factory building, the other half of the complex that Riverside Industries is located in. And I walk from there to the center of town. I don't ever go by car. I also don't ever go by bike, even though I am a cyclist or a bicyclist, because I'm scared to death of riding my bike on Union Street. I'm hoping that that will change. And I'm going to reiterate the recommendations about making some plans in the plan for the location of some street art. And Pasqualina will be happy. And Marcia, who's already left, likewise, whom I've also known since at least 2006. She was the dean of Holyoke Community College before she retired. I also want to reiterate raised table crosswalks. They really make a big difference to slow traffic down. There are some on Florence Road coming up out of downtown Florence that make a big difference. People, you know, the signs say hump, or not hump, but yes, something does hump, and it's 20 miles per hour. You don't really want to go much faster than that. So I'm all in favor of more of those, along with the RRFDs, and I pushed to get the one that we have right down here on Cottage Street by the driveway to my building. And I worked with Dan Murphy on that way back several years ago. So this is a good-looking project. There are little fine-tunings that need to be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tom Brown, resident of Easthampton and current member of the Economic Development Commission. I just want to start out by thanking you all for this meeting tonight, and thank you for your participation in this project. There may be some short-term pain, but I can see the long-term gain, and it's going to be beautiful when it's done, no doubt in my mind. Just a couple of comments, questions. One is I see the project referred to as Cottage Street to High. There's a short stretch, obviously, from High Street to the head of Main Street in front of Big E's. Does that stay the way it is today? Is that not included in the project, from High Street to Main?
Correct.
Could you at least throw a skim coat on it?
The reason why we stopped at that point, I think when you get further up, it gets into the signal operations and where the detection is for that, and once you start pulling that thread on the sweater, where do you stop? I think that's maybe a latter future project that the city might be exploring down the road, but for now, we went through High Street in the intersection,
And then a few folks have mentioned trees, but I don't want to overlook the fact that there are already many trees on Union Street. I don't know if those are going to be saved or if those are going to be lost as part of the project.
Chances are they're going to be taken down as part of the project when we change the profile. My guess is that they may or may not survive at least the change in elevation, but we will put back trees, and I think when we were working with the businesses, we'd make sure the placement was in a manner that wouldn't block signs from the buildings or doors or things like that that would kind of make them mad.
Sure. And lastly, since you brought up the poles first and Pat brought it up second, there was a plan years ago, I don't know where it ever went, to possibly move the poles to behind the buildings on Union Street, on that side of the street, and run them down there all the way to the pond to reconnect to the utilities there. So again, while you'd hate to see something like that come up 2 years from now after it's all done, I guess it's probably private property, so it could be difficult, but again, there was an idea to try to put the poles behind the buildings going down the street.
So the only thing I can speak to that is, I'm guessing the cost for that would be pretty substantial too, not only for an easement from the utility companies that run the power from that side, but also any conversion of panels into the building. If they're coming in on the front, the panels have to go either in the back and come in through the back, or you have to somehow get the wiring through the building to the panel. So obviously you can do anything if you have money and have the land, but I think that would be pretty costly too.
Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown, before you leave, is there an E on the end of your name?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Didn't spell it tonight. E-R-O-W-N.
Good evening, Jessica Allen, Jessicca, last name Allan. I think I am the last speaker, so I think I want to try to end this on a positive note, and I just want to say thank you. These monies are incredibly competitive at the regional level, and I think that it's worth noting that this has been a project that has been hard fought by the municipal staff for many years, and that we should be extremely thankful that it's even being considered on the regional transportation program now as it is. And it takes a lot of work of the staff to keep it there on the regional transportation dollars, and so I just want to acknowledge the hard work of both Matt in helping the city move along. Thank you to the state for providing the dollars, and I'm thrilled, and I can't wait to see this actually come to fruition. It'll be better no matter what it is.
Probably the best time to do that.
Sorry, let me, just before you come up, because Josh will wrap it up right after you, but the city said that we're basically, this presentation will be put up online on the website tomorrow. In the next day or two, the video of this meeting will be up as well. And then the city and I think DOT will be accepting comments for 10 days or so after this, or how long do you have your...
Yeah, but I'm not going to turn them away.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
Okay, I came up because I want to be able to spell my name. Annette Schigel, ANNETTESZCZYGIEL. Got it?
Nice.
Since we're losing parking spots on Union Street, has anybody brought up the discussion of demolishing the Hurry and Scurry building and having a little parking lot there? I don't know if that's, if you can bring that up or if it's the city, but it's a disgusting building. We're going to be doing the whole street over. If we could get rid of that building, we could have a lot of new parking spots there.
Go, Nicole. I can't.
That's fine, I've got that one running.
So good to see you, Annette. So Hurry and Scurry is privately owned, and it's up to that property owner to decide what is best in their plans for the property, and the city would always be open to a conversation of a public good use of that property. Thank you.
Yes, we will.
Are there any other questions and comments before I do the last closing remarks? All right, then if there are no other questions and comments, I'd like to remind you that the last sheet of the handout is the mail-in sheet. If you have any further questions or comments, or there weren't enough mail-in sheets, I can give you my email address.
One more.
Yep.
My husband works at Lathrop.
I'm sorry, would you identify yourself again, please?
I did twice, but I will again.
It's just for the typist who's listening to the recording.
Okay, Cheryl, Cheryl, Campbell, Campbell.
Thank you.
Lathrop Community, Retirement Community, has just installed 2 speed humps on the way down their hill. They are blacktop. They are not bricks, they're not concrete. You can salt over them, sand over them, what have you. Their speed limit is 15 miles per hour. They are awesome. They are huge. They lift my car off the street. So if anyone goes more than 20 miles per hour over a speed hump like that, you will fly. So maybe we could use blacktop, and maybe we could put speed humps or bike path, whatever you want to do. Blacktop works.
And so just to clarify, it's a decorative print treatment, but it's asphalt, so it's not bricks.
Okay.
So if that
Cottage
helps.
Street was bricks, so I just wanted to clarify,
Yep.
make sure.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks. The speed humps are productive.
Actually,
More-
Cottage Street is not bricks. Cottage Street is an asphalt
Okay,
imprint.
they changed it.
Yep.
Okay, but the speed humps are productive.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any others? All right, he reminded me he could just put up my info, so if you want to write it down, if there's not enough handouts, you can send me an email in the same format and I'll register it as an official question and I will answer it. And you may do that within 10 days of this date and it will become part of the official record. Before I close this hearing, I would like to say it will be as long as you are interested in looking at plans that are over there. And we will try to respond to questions that affect you personally. Thank you very much for attending and providing us with this facility. I declare this hearing closed at, can somebody tell me what time it says over there really quickly?
8:05.
8:05.
Well, it's 8:07 here, so.
8:06, let's split the difference. Thank you very much, everybody.
One of your best.
I know, I like that. Jessica's comment.
Very well done.
That's true. Anything is better. Right, Tracy? How are you? Good, good.
It was entirely
Thank you, sir.